Oh, yes. This is the Hardcore Marketing Show. I'm Casey Cheshire, your host for this epic journey. And today's show, sponsored by Cheshire Impact, on a mission to help people maximize their use of Pardot and Salesforce. CheshireImpact.com. Bam. And we're live. All right. I am so excited, and I got to get right into it to introduce my guest today. I can't wait to dive into the topics that we're about to talk about. This is the Marketing Leader Series. And boy, do I have a badass marketing leader we're going to learn from here today. Often referred to as the marketing Swiss Army knife. She's also a fellow marketing automation practitioner, Infusionsoft partner, writer, developer, designer, mentor, and currently the CMO of Gate39 Media. Sarah McNabb, how are you?
I'm great, Casey. How are you? Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, no, your introduction, there's just so much to talk about. and in the theme for today is that Marketing Leaders series, really interviewing marketing leaders, seeing what's out there, talking about strategy, smashing myths, and well, let's just get right to it. So here is Thor's hammer. And just go ahead and take that. It's heavy.
Oh, yeah.
It smashes things great. So go ahead and smash for me some like bogus strategy out there, or maybe it's just some misconceptions that are out there and in the office or in marketing teams out in the wild.
Absolutely. I think it's a little bit unconventional, but the myth that I would like to smash today is the use of profanity being an unprofessional way to speak at work.
Wow.
I actually think that using profanity selectively at work can establish comfort with others, and you're speaking from a place of honesty. And, we're not in the 1950s anymore. We have come to recognize that it's okay to be yourselves at work. I think this can help create connection with your own staff. It also shows that you're kind of emotionally engaged to the topic and that you care about the topics and the subjects and your clients. Clearly, I wouldn't, curse or swear around clients or go at anyone in an aggressive manner using profanity. But to be able to place emphasis and use it where needed can get people's attention more. And I work in a very male-dominated industry. The financial industry is incredibly male-dominant.
Okay.
And so as a woman coming in and trying to get attention, prove my place and but still be effective and in my role, I've found that using profanity can get attention, can allow me to be taken more seriously in several cases, to selectively drive home certain points that I'd like to make. I think the myth that men are more by nature prone to use more coarse language, it's more expected from them, and that when women use it, they're perceived as being irrational or overly emotional. I think that's bullshit.
Yeah, I think it's cool. I think, and back to your earlier point about communicating, as long as you're being authentic, that was the word that came to my mind and I think when we aren't swearing when one's necessary, maybe we're not being authentic in that regard. At the same time, you wouldn't just want to drop a whole bunch of F-bombs for no reason. Because it would just sound weird. But if you're being authentic and something is cool as shit and you just want to go ahead and throw it out there, like, why not? Right?
Right. It's the underline of that word that you want to really get across. I think it's okay to express yourself that way.
Sure.
And in business, it's becoming more and more acceptable in the financial industry and having worked around traders and brokers for, gosh, at this point, it's been like 16 years. That's just everyday language. And so you learn to speak it. And it's, I think it's apropos for women to use that within a male-dominated industry, particularly in order to be brought up to the level of I'm speaking the same language you are.
Right.
And I belong here.
Interesting. I'd love to unpack that and separate. It's almost like the first part is just using the language in general. And then the second part is, and I'd love to get your experience in that male-dominated world, female, then using the language. So just language in general. a lot of people would say that's unprofessional. And I know you said not with clients. Is there a certain threshold or certain lines you're seeing?
Well, I've worked with clients who will use profanity in the
Right.
course of describing what it is that they want to get across.
Yeah.
And, you know, you kind of have to follow lead and reciprocate where it's necessary in terms of language to be able to get that person to associate you as somebody who understands what you're saying, coming from
Right.
a place of honesty,
Right.
acknowledging that, yes, you understand that this particular thing is very important to them, therefore they're emphasizing certain things. It's, again, really depends on the situation
Yeah.
and the person and the client, and age can be a factor, and just really depends on the situation. So you really, if you can read the room,
Mm-hmm.
if you can read the client, if you can read your staff,
Right.
you will be able to use language in a way that helps make more connections.
Right. Like if the culture around you is that, then there's no
Right.
reason you shouldn't feel free to be yourself too.
Right. And
Yeah.
especially being women, that ladylike
Oh,
behavior,
sure. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't want to come across as being a doormat.
Yeah.
So sometimes you have to push back. That involves using language. And make it known that you have a place at the table and you belong there.
Totally. Your office sounds fun. You ever just walking around, just, it's like a bunch of sailors.
It really, some days are like that. We have in our office, we have teams of graphic designers and
Yeah.
website developers, and work with writers and CRM experts, and then of course my CEO. And everybody's got their days where they need to vent a little bit.
Yeah.
So that's where also that language comes into play, and within the culture of our
Right.
firm and our agency. So it does help relieve stress as well as get points across.
Totally. And I think we chatted even, we talked earlier and said, hey, this podcast, just be you, if you want to swear, go for it. If there's a certain thing, and I know you were like, oh, cool. And it's almost like it changed the dynamic a little bit because, there's that polished, almost unreal factor that can happen in media or, even in some podcasts where it's so polished that, it's edited down to the second and nope, you can't really say what you really want to say,
Right. And when it comes to marketing, a lot of times people perceive marketing as being very plastic and very surfacey and fake. And so the people behind the scenes, if they're restrained to having to use fake, plastic, surfacey, proper language all the time in the business, I just don't see that as, like you use the word, authentic.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's a lot of cranking and grinding behind the scenes. It's stressful. The pretty end product that comes out isn't always done with ease. And so everybody behind the scenes, I think, has earned the right to be authentic in their language, honest in their language, to be who they are, to create more of an authentic advertisement or piece of marketing or piece of content. It's super important these days to have an authentic story to tell. And if it
Right.
comes from an honest place, which starts in either your agency or your marketing department, I mean, it's super important. Kind of is all connected.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was thinking the question of, even in your office, or, is there a particular group? You mentioned developers over here, and who swears the most, or who feels free to do that the most?
I would say probably me.
Yeah. Okay. You're leading leadership, right?
Yes. And overseeing the different pain points from each department, when sometimes when things don't come together, that creates that spark of stress. And you would probably hear me, say those words more or less several times a day, especially being somebody who's also a point person for client contact and
Yeah.
account management. If I get a request that's somewhat, throws a wrench into our daily plans and our workflow,
Right.
we're gonna handle it, but it's not gonna come without me saying, shit, or,
Right.
man,
It's not even at someone. It's
yeah,
just the
it's not.
situation calls for it,
Yeah,
And there's a difference there. And I think sometimes we lob all that together, like, oh, well, that must be offensive to. It's not even going at anyone. It's just
right.
we're
It's
declaring the situation as.
exactly. I'm
Yeah.
standing at the top of my hill with my battle sword, and that's what I'm
Yes.
shouting.
Yes, absolutely. Um, you know, the real language. And I was asking earlier because in my head I'm thinking, oftentimes even the guests on the show, I tell everybody you can swear because, AKA, be authentic, and sales our sales guests. I remember John Barrows, cool guy. I don't know if do you know John?
I don't know, John. No.
He's a sales trainer. He even he trains Salesforce on how to do sales. And
Okay.
on our prep call, he swore more than I think we've had swears on all the episodes combined on the prep call. But then he got so into it on the show, he just it wasn't there, for the language. But it's almost like, is it because there's a lot of men in sales, or is it just because that particular role is given more permission to be real? Or I don't know. I just want to throw that out. Have you seen sales be more open in that way? And
I have.
yeah,
I've worked with several different sales teams in different marketing capacities, and they tend to have less of a filter.
okay, yeah,
And well, particularly in my industry, in financial
oh, okay,
finance and financial technology software, they tend to just be a little bit more abrasive, on the abrasive side, and more blunt. And I understand that they have a lot of other people to compete with out there, and so they have to establish relationships with potential clients who they may become more buddy with,
right,
or have that more like, let's go for a drink, let's be real with each other. And so therefore they are used to using that kind of language in their everyday, how they move about their role. And so with marketing and sales, I mean, marketing and sales tend to be pretty close knits, sometimes
sure,
frenemies, if you will.
yeah. Unfortunately, frenemies. I was gonna say
Yeah,
close, but not too close. Sometimes,
right,
yeah.
right. Then it just rubs off.
Or you would hope it. I almost like I would like it too, because I think marketing could learn something from sales in that regard. And I think you mentioned this, they're building relationship, they're building rapport.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to do that, it's almost like their gut feeling is to tell them to use language that's real. I send people messages, some of my partners and some sales friends and whatnot, and I say dude in the email. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I'm from the 90s or something, but I'm just being me, and people just know, like, Casey says weird things, but it's not like, hello, friend. It's just like, dude, what's up? And I'm just trying to build rapport. And as I think about that, how much could marketing benefit? And you mentioned that plastic marketing,
Yeah.
like that's an amazing idea. That thought of, like, I'm thinking, like, all the just so fake and everything. It comes across so polished, but sometimes the most polished email campaign gets crushed by a simple text email campaign, that's more real.
Right. Or marketing emails that you receive that are so conversational in nature that you
Yeah.
almost think it's hyper personalized with your name. Perhaps it mentions something that I saw that you were interested in this, but I have this other thing for you. But how it's brought to your table, in the tone in which it's presented to you, if it's very conversational, if it's in the tone of a friend or just a conversation, you're going to be more apt to open up and to actually read it, I think, as
Yeah.
opposed to, dear sir or madam, thank you for your business as of late. So
Hmm.
it's something that definitely could benefit marketing in terms of bringing that language into text communications, email communications. Uh, Even I've noticed chatbots at the bottom of
Oh,
some
yeah.
software,
Yeah.
you know picks up and uses language in a very human, conversational way when you think you're on with somebody who's a human, and that language has to be casual enough to be able to communicate with the person, but they think they're talking to a person when it's really AI.
Right. Done right. That
Right.
should be the feeling,
Right.
as opposed to what would you like today?
Exactly.
It's like, geez, it's not even real.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. I mentioned the chatbots. Have you heard of Drift?
I've heard of it, but I'm not super familiar with it.
Yeah, you should check it out. DRIFT, taking the internet by storm. They're owning the emoticon with a lightning bolt. That's kind of like their logo.
Okay.
By the way, I am the fist. It's almost like you gotta like grab your emoticon that you own.
Okay.
But Drift, really interesting. Dave, I think it's Gearhart is his last name. But he is their head of marketing, and they were over at HubSpot, and they left that and they formed Drift. They do chat, but they really are championing that conversational marketing. And the reason I mentioned Dave is because he's on LinkedIn almost daily, and they're doing a video from the office, and he's sort of just sharing. It's not polished. There's no intro, outro. He's doing a record, and he's being real. And you see him on LinkedIn, just being real, throwing out something, a tidbit, having an interview. Those guys have done a real good job of doing that. Even their conferences have speakers you wouldn't even think about hearing from. I think they had the VP of marketing, this amazing woman who ran marketing for like Def Jam Records kind of thing.
Wow.
And
Cool.
I was like, what am I going to learn from her? Like rap? But no, I learned so much. And so, but they exposed us to that, and their communication is so real and unpolished at times. But I think that gets back to you. They're not plastic at all, And so whether their language is real or their presentation, they're very authentic.
And I think that also goes into, everybody these days has to cut through that noise to find out what's important. And you're so used to being sold to. You're so used to having things be thrown in your face in such a way that you're being sold to. Well, when you have those authentic videos that scrap the bullshit of the intro and the outro and go right to it, almost like a how-to on YouTube.
Yeah.
I mean, like very educational. I mean, you on the underlying, you're still being sold to in a way, but you're being educated first.
Right.
And it's being brought to you like, you know what, here's this thing, man, it's going to help your life. Check it out.
Right.
Being very straightforward, maybe using that casual language, but cutting out, the flashy graphics coming in, the, on sale for this or that. Go straight to it, cut to the chase. People's time is very important, and people's attention spans these days are very short. So it kind of hits upon, accomplishing several goals when you can cut right to the chase, get to a how-to video, use casual language, boom, in and out, make an impression.
Right. I hate when how-to videos have intros. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, 30% of this video is going to be skipped.
Right.
Like, it's only a 2-minute video. You don't need your stupid intro. Do you know Justin Barish? Have you met him?
Haven't met him.
Okay. So he was on we chatted a couple days ago. I would love to introduce you to him. He's also in the financial world. And we were talking about content, and he put a bunch of his content out there in front of the forum. But he was just like, look, it's so good, it's so helpful, and it was wildly successful because it was actually helpful. I think sometimes we get too wrapped up in this little content, and a great title is going to trick you into not only clicking but filling out this form, but when you get to it, it's actually going to be junk. But to actually be helpful enough to just get that content to them to try to help them, I think is really cool.
Yeah, and content, you do have to provide value.
Yeah.
It can't be just another, Me Too marketing bit. You have to provide something that's actually of value and something that's unique and provide a unique perspective. Even things that are short form, like a give to get of, for example, like a 2019 checklist of the, for identifying, top marketing trends or things like that, where it's a short checklist or guideline or a punchy, pithy title, something that you can't live without, but something that's also unique and has a unique spin and perspective. Everybody can put out the same futures guide, but unless you provide something a little bit different, like here's a guide to exotic futures, or different black swan scenarios in the financial markets, something that could either tickle upon your fears, or just pique your interest in terms of an intriguing title, even though it's this kind of the same information that's used over and over. It's really how you package it, and you don't have to package it long form. It can be put into something that's more infographic, more tightly edited down, and just presented, packaged beautifully.
Right. Huh. I love that. Just the idea of not just your standard content future. Here's your, what does the future of 2019, 2020 look like? It's like the exotic future or the black swan. What could go wrong? It's just kind of different. It's like, you're right. You're trying to get that, you're trying to cut through the noise, is what you said earlier. I love that.
Yeah.
So noisy. There's so much plastic marketing out there. So being authentic, but also being interesting.
Right.
Helpful and entertaining at the same time.
Right. And, getting your story across through these pieces of content and through these offerings, of your firm, how your tone is going to come across, your value.
Right.
And it's not necessarily, telling the entire story, but the right story. Right.
Now, I got a question. I'm dying to ask you this. I know we chatted a little bit about this, the idea of B2B and B2C. And, we work with a lot of B2B companies at Treasure Impact, some B2C as well. But I think you've got a different take on it. So, what's your thought? Is there ever a good time to have those differentiators, or should we throw them out?
Well, I think when it comes to marketing, and when it comes to a marketing approach, and like I mentioned to you, before our call, a colleague in my industry had said something that makes a little bit more sense to me as the more I think about it, and that is that the idea of B2B and B2C marketing is relatively archaic, because in the end, you're speaking to a human being, period. Our agency is a B2B agency as well, but we understand that at the end of every message that somebody is reading, it's a person reading it, a decision maker is looking at it. You still have to convey the same benefits in certain ways. You're not speaking to a company, you're speaking to a decision maker, and that is a person. This industry is one where, when we try and help clients appeal to investors and people who are looking to give up assets for somebody else to manage, when it comes down to it, that investor needs to be able to have trust in that establishment. They're not going to trust the establishment. They're going to trust their money manager. They're going to trust an actual human being. And so I think just the underlying flow between B2B and B2C is there's always people involved. And so I think, yes, there's a place for communication and behind the scene of how you approach B2B and B2C, but in the end, you really are you're speaking to another human being, and it's how you're going to speak to them.
When you mentioned the idea of trust, and you can trust companies, but when I thought about it, I was like, sort of, but you trust people so much more.
Agreed. Yeah, you don't,
like what's a company I trust?
Yeah,
I would say Apple, but then every now and then they do something stupid. So
Right. Right. There's always, the people are the ones working the mechanisms behind the scenes. So
definitely not Google. I don't know. They're building robots to take us over for sure.
And then of course that leads into the question of, do people trust brands? How do they trust brands, and what factors go into that? What makes a brand trustworthy? Well, it's all the people behind the scenes that make that brand trustworthy. It's the brand itself is really just a facade. It's a piece of plastic.
That's a good point. Yeah, like that's a good point. I think, do I trust the iPhone brand created from Apple? I have, and then minus Steve Jobs, where he'll like cancel a whole run of something because
Right.
like one of the things that drives me crazy is do you have an iPhone or your Android?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah, I have an iPhone.
Which one do you have?
Mm,
Do you know what number?
I think it's the 5S.
So, I had a 5S. Yeah. Good one. Really good one. Eventually I had to get an 8, and I don't know if you can see this, but the camera, it comes out a little bit.
Oh, it does.
Holding it up to the monitor. Everyone listening is like, what? Go on YouTube, people. So, the 5, and I think yours 5S doesn't, right? It's flat.
Mm-hmm.
Flush.
It's flat.
And
it's flush.
Do you have a case on it?
I do.
Okay. I like a crazy man, like never had a case on mine because I was like, well, if this phone was intended to have a case on it, Steve Jobs would have created it with one, and it's like, he doesn't have one. And it's almost like there's no stylus because he created it without one.
Mm-hmm.
And so I carried it like that. I almost never dropped it. And even if I did, it'd get some dings here and there. Totally fine. Got the 8 with the little camera that's beveled out. It's more. And it's funny. I met this really cool person at Dreamforce, and now she's part of the company. But she was saying something like, "Oh, excited!" and she moved her hands up, and I was holding my phone, and it,
Oh no!
like brand new iPhone 8 at Dreamforce, flies up in the air, hits the ground, it shatters the lens in half, the camera lens.
Oh my goodness!
And I've dropped my 5 millions of times, but not dropped this. And I thought, you know what? Steve would not have let this thing jut out like that. He'd be like, why does it come out like that? Why isn't it flush? And people are like, well, Steve, you kind of need, like, I don't care. Shut up. Go fix it. Right. And then they would have, and it would be fine, like the 5, but no. Someone talked someone into it, and no one was there saying like, no,
Right.
that person that I trusted. Right. And so now it has this thing, and now I have a case, and because I know that if one drop, I could shatter this stupid little circle glass on there.
Right.
Crazy.
Yep. All leads back to a person. It
does. So like I've even heard like B to H, B to human before. And I wonder about even like terms we use, we refer to people as leads or as,
mm-hmm.
this MQL, it's like 14 MQLs. It's actually 14 human beings underneath.
Right.
14, if you click on them, you'll see their names on your software. We can forget with that number in front of us that it's actually a person.
It's true. I mean, establishing those buyer personas within your system can start to help, but yeah, right. I agree. I think some of the terminology is very clinical when it comes to dealing with humans.
Yeah, even like the idea of a funnel dealing with humans, have you ever seen that? There's like an infographic where it shows like what everyone thinks a marketing path looks like. Oh, this content, over to sales 1. And then it's like what it really looks like. And it's this crazy scribble. Yeah, It's a crazy scribble map. And, I worked on late stage content, early stage content. I waited for 7 months, another content, talked to someone, bought, it makes no sense.
It's true. It's a huge scribble. It's a big network, spider web network, and is not as streamlined or pretty as people think it is. Agreed. For sure. You mentioned something. You said the funnel. Now, yeah. I'm kind of the mind, and we are a HubSpot agency, but it makes more sense, I think, to maybe acknowledge that marketing funnel, that shape has sort of shifted.
Okay.
With a funnel, it essentially ends from either top to bottom or left to right.
Yeah.
But if it were more of a wheel or a flywheel,
mm-hmm.
you could continue on and use that marketing continuum to continue to get your customers to participate in your growth, investing as much marketing into something where, it's going to continue that momentum, the energy you put into it is what you get out of it. It's an interesting evolution how marketing continues to evolve, but like the idea, that whole theory of the sales funnel I think it's shifted a little bit. What do you think?
Interesting. I was just going to ask you if you think it's OG having a funnel, because I know, guys like
I do.
Sangram
Yeah.
are flipping it, Is it enough to flip it, or do we need a circle, or a different shape or something?
I think if you have a shape that's rooted in momentum, that you can keep going, because you still, once you get somebody as a customer, you still have to keep providing value, and you still have to keep delighting them and providing education and really keeping their eyes focused towards you, because there's so many other competitors out there that they could easily be swayed to leave you for. And so it's an ongoing marketing, I think, is essential in retaining customers. You can't just assume that somebody's going to stay with you once they sign up or open an account.
True.
You have to continue to, I use that word delight, to continue to provide value. And I think that is kind of a circular shape.
Sure. I think stages make sense, but they don't have to be in a car oil funnel,
right?
Or a sieve with things leaking out the side. And you're right, that overall shape may be not the thing. We want to be able to track progression, but to your point, it
exactly
doesn't really end when you hand it to sales. Certainly doesn't end when you hand it to sales, and it doesn't end when sales closes it. Now, maybe some people are like, well, that's somebody else's job. That's like customer service, or that's, but if marketing is, if you're the voice of the company, then you're right. You need to keep that message going. And now it's onboarding, use your automation. Now the drip campaign is an onboarding drip campaign. Or
truly.
an upgrade. Yeah.
When, my firm doesn't put a lot of money into online advertising. We don't do media buys because we are in a relatively small industry, financial industry here in Chicago, in New York. We get most of our business from word of mouth from other clients. And so to have those clients actually become advocates and evangelize for us and participate in our company growth, I mean, we see that very in a very concentrated way, being a boutique agency, excuse me, and working with a lot of the same types of companies throughout the industry. Everybody knows everybody. Yeah. And so that, especially that, keeping that momentum going with maintaining quality work, keeping a good reputation, is just going to continue to flow through and make our customers participate in our ongoing growth. And so that's where I relate to that flywheel concept.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And I think just as we don't want to trick people into clicking and then getting,
right,
or trick people to fill out the form and get nothing. We don't want to trick people to get on the phone and get nothing, or trick people into buying and getting nothing. So it's like,
right,
you got to be with it the whole way through. It's not like, aha, I got you past that threshold. Peace. I'll see you later.
right.
I'm out.
Can't leave them hanging.
Right. Do you have like a go-to, when you think of like all these different strategies out there for marketing, do you have like a go-to overall strategy of how you approach marketing in general?
I think, getting back to that basic, using that like mnemonic device of when you set marketing goals, that SMART, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-based. I think that's a good way to approach setting any type of marketing goals. Having something specific in mind, something that's actually attainable. To be able to establish, concrete criteria for measuring, and then of course creating like a framework for a framework in which to measure that particular goal. So I think that is kind of the overall way I would approach the majority of our marketing projects.
The goals make sense. You got to have a goal before you get cranking.
Otherwise, what's the point?
Right.
We're not doing this for fun.
Right. Busy work at that point, right?
It is busy work. Yeah.
You're spinning your cycles.
That's right.
And, there's a lot of stuff out there that just activity based. Well, I sent 100,000 emails out. How did they do? I have no idea. All I had to do was send them out.
Yep. And then it goes into the ethos, and you never hear from it again. It's in a situation where, after establishing those goals and creating the plan and being able to measure it and stuff at the end of it, again, going back to the whole, flywheel concept, you have to constantly iterate and optimize on what you've done. If you can't pinpoint the weaknesses in your plan, or at least A/B test to see which one's going to work out better, what's the point? You have to continually level up on your activities and how you approach marketing.
Absolutely. You mentioned SMART goals. You mind just going through the different letters? Because I think that's a great reminder for everyone.
So it's a mnemonic device.
Yep.
SMART. So the first one is specific. S is for specific. So a specific goal has a better chance of being achieved than a general goal, right?
Yeah.
I think everybody can agree with that.
Yeah.
And like for an example, instead of having a general goal be like establish our firm as a thought leader.
Right. Yeah, what is that even? Yeah.
Right. A more specific goal would be, hey, let's contribute 6 trending articles on futures market commentary in, oil markets in different publications in Q1. Mm-hmm. Those are very specific things. Much more attainable because it's much more visible.
Mm-hmm.
You can wrap your head around it instead of just, saying let's become a thought leader. It's just too vague. The second one, measurable. You have to have the ability to establish concrete criteria for measuring progress in the attainment of each goal. So, setting baseline, metrics, starting somewhere and being able to track those numbers. Of course, lots of marketing automation systems are really helpful in that department, right?
In that department, yeah.
And so achievable is your A, right? It's got to be realistic. It's got to be something that's challenging but still attainable. I mean, you're setting yourself up for failure if you think you're gonna, hey, I'd like to be on the Forbes list myself. Let's have that as a goal for this year. Well, that's not realistic.
Right.
You gotta approach something with a degree of realism, right? The R is relevant.
Mm-hmm.
And while, having a goal matters to you, the goal of, let's say, your content marketing strategy has to be relevant to your audience.
Right.
It has to be relevant to your audience. It's got to appeal to them, provide value to them. You're doing this for them. And then the T is more of, time-based. And that's the framework that every goal needs a frame of time and a deadline to work within.
Yes.
It helps prevent you from getting off track, but it also is the part of that kind of formula that will help prevent everyday tasks from taking priority over your long-term goals.
Right. Cool. There's a cool quote from Dan Sullivan that there's no such thing as an unreasonable goal, just an unreasonable timeline. I like that. It's
That's a good one.
True.
True.
Let's make sure the time is accurate, and then it's attack it one step at a time for sure. Yeah, I think that's really important to set goals, but then use criteria like this to make sure that you're spending your effort in the right direction, and it's something that you can hold yourself accountable to.
Exactly. And everybody else is going to be looking too. Right. So when somebody comes to you or a client comes to you, you have to be able to provide metrics and provide kind of a scorecard, which is what we do in our agency every month for clients. They want to see where they're at and how they're progressing. And if you can't show that, I mean, you can tell somebody, yeah, your campaign's doing great. But unless you provide those concrete metrics, no one's going to believe you.
Right. Right. And I think that's where technology comes in. And you mentioned HubSpot, there's Infusion stuff, there's Pardot, Marketo, all these tools done right, working with a partner to help you set them up if you need that or execute them. Then you can get things like ROI. You can get things like understanding how it's working and the measurables for that SMART goal.
Exactly. Find your cost per lead. I mean, that's
Yeah.
super important when it comes to, running a business and understanding how you're getting your value for what you're paying for. And everything's expensive. And so you have to be able to optimize the tools that you have.
Right. Right. So I got a question for you. Who are you? How did you become this like
Boy.
thought leader in the space and marketing wizard? Take us back to, little you back in the day, tiny Sarah. Like what was the progression? How did you end up, getting into this field and all those kind of things?
Well, I grew up in a rural Collier County outside of Chicago, so I was surrounded by cornfields and soybean fields. My parents were very hardworking and instilled a pretty fierce work ethic in me.
Mm-hmm.
When I was 7, I'd come home after school and I'd have a list of chores, laundry, cleaning, get dinner started, because my parents were often very late coming home from work. So I didn't really have a lot of that downtime. My parents, when I was young, actually owned a sawmill.
Wow.
And so they ran it, and that was their business. And so summers when I was 10 years old, I was there bagging sawdust in industrial sized bags for 25 cents a bag,
Wow.
sweating my ass off. It was,
Yeah.
probably, not very good for my lungs and whatnot.
I'm sure. Yeah.
But you know what? It's where I was, and what I was taught to do is just to work hard.
Yeah.
My parents eventually opened like a retail woodworking kind of hardware store, and was brought in and I learned how to work in the office.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of where my whole perhaps marketing / administrative, skills to be able to understand how business mechanisms and the backside of things worked and dealing with clients was very helpful to lay that groundwork.
Right.
Um,
Even that work ethic too,
right.
that work hard, and you probably were super grateful to be inside doing some of the office stuff, taking a break from bagging sawdust 24/7.
I know I was. And, but then like when I was in high school on weekends, I took up a job working at the local bakery. And so I was up at 4 a.m. on Saturdays and Sundays, going in to scrub pans and make deliveries and,
Wow.
delivering donuts to the local gas stations in this rickety
Wow.
van. So it was a work hard kind of thing. But the flip side of that was I happened to be the middle of 5 children.
Wow. Okay.
And so the middle child syndrome didn't pass me over. And I've always wanted, I always wanted to be different, and I always strive to get attention in different ways and to prove myself amongst my siblings. I was the only one in my family to leave home. The only one to, move to Chicago.
Yeah.
Everybody else is still out in the small town. Went to college for illustration because
What's it like going home, by the way? They're all kind of doing their thing and
they're doing their thing and
crushing the city life.
They're all very intimidated by the big city and coming up to the big city, and it's too many people and too many things happening. But I love it. It makes me feel alive, and to be able to see the skyscrapers and see just the massive expanse of everything and everybody's buzzing about it. It makes me feel alive, and it is also comforting to me to know that there's other people about.
Right.
Being isolated out in the country can be peaceful at times, but at the same time, I'm a herd animal, and I need a group.
Totally.
Yeah.
And you were saying you went to school for
illustration.
Art? Illustration.
Yes, I did. So
Cool.
I've been drawing my whole life. It's my passion and my love. And I thought, let's do this for a living. Well, go to school for illustration. They don't really tell you when you're in school, in art school, that there's not a ton of jobs out there for illustrators. I mean, there's certain people that can absolutely make it, and I give them all the credit. But for the type of work that I was looking to do, it eventually was a realization to me that I didn't want someone telling me what to draw.
Right.
I realized that it was more of a fine art thing and less of a commercial art path for me.
Sure.
I went to work as a graphic designer out of school for an airline near O'Hare Airport. And during that time, I picked up website design, became a certified website designer. And from there, I moved into like a marketing associate role for a credit association, in which I could use my graphic talents and my website design talents within the course of marketing and putting together flyers and putting together content. And so I'm trying to make all these connections between my talents and where marketing could lead me, because it was just a broader path, more opportunities down that road. In 2003, I took a marketing manager role for a securities brokerage firm in Chicago, and thus launched my path into the financial industry, which I've been in since then.
Which is like apparently like a tough space, or just
it's niche. It's very niche.
Okay. Yeah.
And yes, it's tough because it is, and I'll go back to saying, male dominated industry, but it's competitive, and you have to be able to hang and have tough skin, and to keep learning and to understand a little bit more of like the trading side of things and the difference between an introducing broker and a registered investment advisor. You have to kind of pick up on those and learn those things, but at the same time understand how marketing is special in financial industry because of compliance and regulation, and understanding what language you can and cannot use and what you can and cannot say. Everything is scrutinized. Everything has to be documented. So
there's emails, right? Don't you have to like save all your emails, your marketing emails? And
yes, if you're a firm, FINRA and SEC do require you to maintain copies of all client communications. Jeez. And even in the brokerage firm that I started out with, they had a recorder on their phone, and the phone would have to record every call, and there was tape backups, old school tape backups of those calls that they would keep in boxes. They'd have to keep them for 7 years.
I'm just imagining all those, sales guys and gals we were talking about, where they're having those real conversations with people, with all the language recorded for all time. Oh gosh,
it's not against the law to say shit or anything like that. But if you say I guarantee it, I guarantee a return, then yes, that's a problem.
Oh, yeah. Go back to the tapes.
Back to the tapes.
You said it was guaranteed. Wow. Right. Wow. So I loved how you were able to, experiment. You found your passion early, and you're like, this is awesome. But at the same time, you gotta put, food on the table and find, where the market values that. And so you're able to connect that with marketing. I think marketing is cool in that way, and that whether your passion is data or analytics or creative or conversation, like there's typically an outlet inside of marketing for it.
There is, and I still create art as kind of a stress reliever.
Oh, cool.
Being in a stressful situation or a stressful job, and it is stressful, I need to have that way to blow off some steam. Yes. And so I do still foster my love for illustration and create surrealist illustrations. And I actually have a website where I'm always working on something. So the drawings that I do, I post to my website, which is famousafteridie.com. And the prints that the prints that I sell, all proceeds I put into microloans through kiva.org, because I'm fortunate enough to have a job that does support me. I don't need to make money off my art. I'd rather try and give back and put forward something good into the universe.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. Wow. You're really good.
Thank you.
This is, oh, wow.
It's not for everybody, but I enjoy it.
You got some edge to it for sure. It's some edgy artwork there. Put it above my kids' rooms, they're gonna have nightmares.
Yeah.
But I love it. This is cool. I see. I don't know if there's some Alice in Wonderland going on in here.
A little bit. Right now, I'm doing a kind of a focus series on German fairy tales, and those are all very dark.
Oh, very cool.
Very dark stories.
Yeah, I'm almost afraid to mention that Cheshire is the last name, so I'm a big fan of the Cheshire
Cheshire
cat,
cat.
So,
Yeah.
but I've seen some variations where it's a happy little cat from Disney, and it's like this like dark,
Mm.
menacing cat on a tree.
Sinister
So
creature.
which
Yeah.
way to go? Yeah, but that's really cool. You're able to then not only use your passion, but then I see some prices on here, and they're actually totally reasonable. People should check. We'll link to this in the show notes. But like then you put that toward microloans. Tell me more about that. Is that like other countries, and you're like helping them out, or?
Yes, absolutely. So microfinancing has become a thing where the organizations like Kiva will put out profiles of people, entrepreneurs in other countries. A lot of times they are in third world countries, people who are looking to try and develop their business or develop their farm or, start a business or continue to purchase goods for sustaining their business, in which they would then therefore sustain their family.
Right.
The microloans, starts at $25
Wow.
a piece. And so you can go in and make a portion of a loan to somebody who the total of their loan would be, let's say, $200. So you and several other people are contributing to this person's loan. And then they, of course, over time pay it back, and they pay it back through Kiva. And so there's organization there, and there's validation there that it's a legitimate need. And so I have been happy to put my money towards these things. And when they do pay it back, it goes back into my own account, but I just reinvest it into other people. And I tend to really focus more on empowering women who are in entrepreneurial positions, like farm in different countries, people who are who need a cow.
Yeah.
Who need to try and purchase a dairy cow.
It's
So
a
that
whole
they can feed
category
their
on here.
family.
I'm looking at it right now. Yeah, there's a whole category for women.
So that has been kind of my pet organization that I have been putting my talents to try and put them to work for this.
Yeah. Do you end up with stories? Do you get to hear background, or you just know that you've helped that particular effort?
The profiles have the stories behind the people of what it is that they're looking to get these microloans for and what they're looking to accomplish and why, and it gives a little bit of background about people's families and their struggles. And so you do know a little bit about the person when choosing. You can go through kind of a portfolio of different people seeking loans, and from there pick who you would like to support in different sectors like agriculture and arts and education.
Wow.
And I tend to, for some reason, I tend to gravitate towards the agricultural part.
Interesting. This is really cool. Do you know Carlos Hidalgo?
That name sounds familiar.
Yeah,
That name sounds very familiar.
Thought leader. Man, he was with that big. What was his? Well, he got out of the game and just now does consulting. But one of his passions is to go with his wife to Uganda, and they have this organization that just helps women out in Uganda, and it builds them up. It gets them businesses, gets them education, because that ends up being like that glue for the community.
Right.
It makes so much sense, and it even I even noticed when I was in Iraq the difference between things working out well and not was where the place of women in society, and so not to get all political and whatnot, but I just noticed that was so important. So when Carlos mentioned that, he almost got me to go to Uganda. I'm still interested, Carlos. You got to schedule it, but yeah, it's so powerful. So I love that these micro loans is just a tiny, it's a tiny thing for us, like you said, $25, and then you end up making these huge differences. I'm looking at people, it buys fertilizer for corn.
Exactly. I mean,
yeah,
women are 50% of the population. So, while I'm on the side of the line saying how difficult it is being a woman in a male dominated industry and trying to establish my role, there's women on the other side of the world who've got it much harder than me. And so, and I recognize that. I understand my privilege and my place of privilege. And so this is the least I can do with my talents, is to try and lift them up a little bit and to try
100%.
and provide more opportunity for people who are in other places that don't have the opportunities I do.
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. I mean, I was just reading here, like, and got a loan, $400 to help buy another, like a very quality dairy cow. Like, awesome.
Yep.
She's building something, building businesses. And that's
Yep.
awesome to see that.
And the majority of those loans, they pay them back.
I saw that. It was like 98 point something percent. Yeah, 96.8% repayment. Of course, like these are good people. They, help.
Absolutely.
But they're doing something with it. It's not just like, some people might say it's not. They're actively building a business. We know what it's like. We've all got help when we were first starting out, whether it was a mentor or like a really awesome customer who's just like, I know things that you're a little not as polished as it could be, but I trust you. We're going to stay with you and grow with you. That kind of
thing. Exactly.
So last question I have for you, because there's just so many things I've been learning here, is that marketing career. You're CMO, you've been in marketing, you've got that seat at the table. If you were to give advice to little Sarah, who we talked about earlier, on career or how to better navigate or faster navigate, or maybe just do what you did, but what would you tell her? What kind of career advice, for her, but also other marketers out there and other, female marketers for sure out there, what kind of advice would you give them?
Absolutely. So if I had to give advice to my younger self starting out in the financial industry and marketing roles, and the best advice I would be able to give would be a few things. So number one would be recognize that you are in business and you are not here to make friends. And that at the end of the day, this is a business. Don't try and spend your time trying to make friends or, become friends with everybody or worrying about, what other peers think. You have to really understand that the difference between, your work and your life outside of work, where you would have those other friendships. The other piece of advice, and I say this to my staff all the time, is to speak up. You can't be afraid to ask for things. You'll never get what you don't ask for. And that does take a measure of courage and of boldness and discomfort sometimes, because sometimes it can be really uncomfortable to ask for things. It's so important that you do. Life is short. You have to go for it. And then I guess the last piece of advice isn't really just to my younger self. It is to all young women. And a little bit of a story.
Yeah.
I once read that Catholic nuns tend to walk down the sides of hallways because if they walk down the center of the hallway, they find that is putting themselves in the center of the space, and that is vain. And so they walk down the sides of hallways almost in a submissive manner, almost apologetically for their existence. And so that has always stuck with me. And, being an ex-Catholic, that also has a place in my mind. So I want to say to all the younger people, all the younger women out there who are coming up, walk down the center of the hallway.
I love it.
Have the confidence and be you unapologetically. It doesn't matter. You have to walk down the center of the hallway and be present and be counted. And don't be sorry about it.
Love that. Be present. Don't be sorry.
Don't be sorry about it.
So good. So good. Thank you for coming in here and teaching me. Could you maybe throw out some places where people can connect with you? And for sure, maybe just even mention, what, your agency does, because I know you mentioned HubSpot or some of these other things, but how can we connect with you? How can you help?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'll just give a quick intro of what my agency is.
Yeah.
Gate39 Media is a financial marketing and technology agency. We primarily service the financial industry with websites and designs and logos and ongoing marketing and advanced technology that would include things like back-end portals and mobile apps.
Right.
So our client base consists of, ranging from introducing brokers and hedge funds to exchanges and asset managers, a whole kind of gamut. We do deviate a little bit and have some manufacturing clients, but for the most part, we provide concierge type marketing services. We have clients who come in for one and done projects. They just need a website and they're out the door. Other people have been with us for years, and we do ongoing campaigns and marketing measurement for them. We also do CRM optimization services and consulting. And so we are located in downtown Chicago. It's beautiful. And I also write for the blog on our website and put out marketing thought pieces now and then. The website.
What's the URL for that?
The website is gate39media.com.
Okay.
And our blog is right at the top, and it's called Engine 39.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Oh, I was just talking earlier about, if you're going to have a blog, you got to brand it. Make it something. I can't. That's amazing.
It's a lot of fun.
Engine 39 sounds like something we need to subscribe to. How about yourself? LinkedIn, Twitter? What's the best way to connect with you?
Yep. People can connect with me on LinkedIn. Just look for Sarah McNabb. And like you said, I do bill myself as the marketing Swiss Army knife. Yes. So my cover photo is full of Swiss Army knife images. I can be found on Twitter at Sarah McNabb 2016. And if anyone wants to email me directly, it's just sarah@gate39media.com. And that's Sarah with an H.
I love that. Nothing like putting your email address out on a podcast. That sounds like walking down the center of the hallway to me. That's
center of the hallway.
Totally. Well, thank you so much again for coming on here. I've learned so much.
Thanks so much for having me on, Casey. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. And for everyone listening, if you learned something, and I know you did because I've literally got solid pages of notes over here, then share this with someone. Get this information into their hands, especially if you work with women in marketing and you want to just get them this information. They need to hear this and walk down the center of the hallway. So definitely get this in their hands and share this around. But for everyone else out there, thanks for joining us, and we will see you all next time.